Good afternoon, everybody. Oops. How's that? Good. So we're right here at 1:40, and this is 20 minutes. So we'll get going. And it's going to go really fast. Did a session yesterday that was an hour. That's kind of more, I haven't done one of these 20 minutes before, so we're gonna go pretty quick. My name's William Lewallen. I run the cloud solution provider, the CSP business in the US. And today, essentially what I want to start off with asking, who's familiar with the MSP playbook that Microsoft published probably about 2 months ago? Cool. The fact that you aren't tells me two things. One, there's a great resource out there for you to leverage. Two, I'm going to essentially present to you the core of the framework for building a managed services practice. It's a 10-step framework. We'll go through what that is, and then I have one of our partners who's going to come up and talk about their current process of building out a managed service practice to kind of give an example and some color to the framework that I present. So right before we jump in, one of the things I like to talk about that's driving the need for us to have a conversation today is really is a dynamic about shifting risk in the industry. If you haven't read Consumption Economics, I'd highly encourage you to do it. I pick it up about once a quarter and reread portions of it. But essentially, it kind of talks about how the tech industry was built and how it's being reconstructed now. And one of the key elements here is that a lot of the risk is being shifted from the customer back to the industry itself. And that we're going to live in a world where consumption is king and people are going to pay for what they use. And if they don't use it, they don't pay. So it becomes a little more imperative for all of us to manage customers kind of more on a life cycle basis, look more holistically across their business, and then work to regularly earn and re-earn their business. Okay. When you go and download the MSP playbook, you'll essentially it's gonna kind of talk through this 10-step framework. I'm not gonna kind of present all the slides, so to speak, but I'm going to kind of speak to them. I follow a few venture capitalists on Twitter. One of them always has a lot of interesting and pithy things to say, and one that I've seen him repeat several times is, if you're kind of stuck and don't know what to do in your business, go talk to your 5 largest customers. They'll be happy to meet with you. So I think of this as, yes, you can do market research, but you have customers, and you have ones that you've hopefully had for a while and have trusted relationships with. That's a great place to start. If you have that kind of relationship, they'll probably be some of your first managed services customers. But I'd really focus on listening to what your existing customers have to say, because you have that credibility and relationship to build on. Another thing I'll mention here is speaking with your peers at this conference, right? This is one of the great things about having everybody here from around the world. I find people are very willing and open to share about what their successes are, what their challenges are. So make sure that you use the rest of your time here for that purpose as well. I should have retitled, I didn't want to change the framework title, but I think of this as build on your strengths. You all have things that you currently do in your business really well. Some people do like to shoot for the stars, but my advice is always start with what you know. And I would also say try not to spread yourself too thin. Most partners I know have 3 to 4 types of managed services offerings, and I think that's a good place to start. So all of us work for somebody. Even if we own our own business, oftentimes we have financial partners who are involved. And so I think it's really important to put together a solid business plan. For most of us in the business, it changes the cash flow structure of how things come in. It changes the way and how our P&L looks like. And I think there's also dynamics involved that I think there's something a little bit later that talks more about really having to think about your pricing strategy and what that's going to look like. So building a managed service practice also means new tools and capabilities. People build their own, people use, we obviously make a lot of tools available as well. We have a ton of partners in the ecosystem whose business is to build these types of platforms. Many of them are here on the floor. So again, another reason to kind of get around and figure out what is going to make sense. Most people I know do a combination of build and buy. Again, it's going to be based on what the DNA of their organization already is. So this is kind of a set of tiered offerings, and I would say that part of the challenge is starting out small is understanding what to price these and how it's actually how your profitability is going to change based on these. We do find that it's not just a scalable component for most people. Meaning the profitability is not the same, it's just a higher revenue, and that it becomes, on the right-hand side of these, they become extremely profitable. And so I think it's a matter of going through some experimentation, and it might be, you might need to build a little bit more muscle around costing, right? When we do project-based services, it's easier to determine profitability. I think it can be a little bit more challenging, but it's not, it's definitely doable. Start small. If you talk to your customers, hopefully they're your first managed service customers. I think eventually, right, coming up with how you currently sell and market will probably need to change if you want to be able to get the volume that you need, and it will be replacing, like I said, a certain cash flow stream in your business. But you know, I think it's good to get started small. I've seen some partners try to wait until they get everything figured out, and I've done that myself in different business ventures, and you know, you can wait and wait and wait. So go out there, test something. If it's not working, you'll know pretty quickly, and you can adapt. Marketing and sales enablement is different just purely from the fact that this is a subscription-based world. This is huge for Microsoft internally. The business I'm responsible for is very different from how we license most of our software. And so there's a lot of new organizational muscle that we have to build, and it has to do with what our messaging looks like to customers, how we train and enable our salespeople, how we pay our salespeople. So we're having to go through this learning curve as well. I think this one is really about different options. Again, not having to pick all of them. I see a lot of people focused on support as a differentiator and industry. Seeing a lot more folks, however, being able to build specializations and differentiation around security. I think that more industry-based things, people tend to get larger deals with higher profitability because they go more into internal business processes that not only affect the cost side of a customer's P&L, but also the top line, the revenue generation side of the business. That's an interesting step. Basically, keep your finger on the pulse. In this business, things go month to month, kind of not year over year, and you'll be getting a lot of feedback. The other thing is, there have been a lot of people, even internally at Microsoft, who are new to this concept of IP and think it always means packaged product. The way that you do business, the documentation that you have to support your teams, how do you go to market, all of those are elements of IP and can be used. We have some partners who have, like I mentioned before, in terms of their offering, in terms of some of the tools, that's obviously IP. And some of those folks are taking those tools to run their business, and they're externalizing them to their customers. So it might be a portal through which a customer can come and see what their consumption of a service is. So it's not just that creates a self-service type of a formula. But anyway, this creates stickiness and affinity for what your offerings are. All right, this goes by really fast. We now have 9 minutes left. At this point, I'm going to bring up Ryan, and he's going to talk to you about his company and what they're doing currently and kind of how they're going through this process. So, Ryan? thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ryan McDonald. I'm Director of Managed Services with 10th Magnitude, and we are we've been founded. We were a Born in the Cloud partner, founded in 2010, and we are now moving into cloud managed services. And really, what's kind of driving us to cloud managed services is our customers are actually asking us to provide that service. So we are 100% Azure focused, and so we are responsible for migrating large customers to the cloud. And they go through this transformation process of migrating their infrastructure to Azure. And they realize that they want to focus their IT staff on more business aligned activities, and they want someone else to partner with them to manage those services in Azure. So that's really what's driving us to build an MSP business, and we're really excited. So these steps that William put up, I have been living those every day for the last several months. We have been talking to our customers. I think the checklist is a great framework to definitely to start. Couple things tips that I want to give you guys to through having been through this process recently is definitely the sales and marketing enablement, right? Making sure that this is a different business that you guys are going to go into, and you've got to treat it that way, or at least we are for sure. And so making sure that your sales and marketing teams understand the value that you're going to be providing to your customers and how you're going to differentiate that in the marketplace. So also making an investment in some of that IP, that differentiation. For example, we have a tool that we use with customers when we engage with them to holistically look at their infrastructure and what it's going to look like inside of Azure. So for managed services, we're making the investment to extend that tool to start to look at what their management of that infrastructure would look like inside of Azure, so that when we engage with the customer at the very beginning, we are talking like the holistic picture, right? The planning, the migration, and then the management. So it's really kind of bringing that full focus to the beginning of the conversations that you have with the customer.
I was going to just if you share where you guys are in the process,
So
and kind of goals maybe for the next 3, 6, 9 months.
definitely. So we are just transparently, we are in the process of building our team. We having been born in the cloud and focused on professional services, we had a Pamlico Capital invested us last year, which is really enabling us to grow into the managed services space. But we are building the operations, hiring the teams, and building some of our foundational goals. So short term is to, like you said, and use some of the tools from the ecosystem. We want to leverage as many cloud native tools as we can to provide our service. And we also, CSP is a really important piece of the MSP business, and making sure that we integrate CSP into our MSP practice and fully. Our customers are really kind of, they want us to do things in a dynamic way, and making sure that we have CSP integrated to support that. And then our medium-term goal is like the checklist said, was we're going to talk to our customers and let our customers drive the direction we're going. We've got really deep experience in IaaS and PaaS and DevOps, and we're going to start with what we know and provide management services there. But from the keynotes and everything that's happened here this week, and Satya talking about serverless and AI and that transformation that's coming. So I'm already starting to think about how do we provide services in this kind of next wave of evolution and thinking about serverless and AI. Yeah.
So just for everybody, how long do you think it's going to take from when Alex tapped you on the shoulder and said, I want you to do this, to when you'll actually have a service and have your first customer?
Yeah, so we've been working on this for several months. I'd say it's probably 4 to 7 months, depending on, from the time you get serious about it and work on your business plan, consume the resources, leverage your Microsoft Teams. For sure, there's a lot of great resources that Microsoft is bringing to bear for you to understand, these checklists. There's also a really great financial model that you can download that gives you the ability to model your professional services. It gives you the ability to model CSP and MSP and use that to help, build some of your business plans. So those activities take some time to really think about how you guys want to go to market and what you want to offer. Yeah, 3 to 6 months, depending
Okay.
on how deep you want to go.
And are the folks that you're hiring, are they all going to be dedicated to the MSP business, or are they going to be shared amongst other parts of the company?
They are going to be dedicated to the MSP business, and that was where we kind of talked about that we really felt like this was a different business, and we're going to have to manage it differently. So we are hiring dedicated people to focus on MSP and the growth. And now we're going to leverage our sales force jointly. We do a lot of outside direct sales, so those guys will add managed services to their briefcase when they go talk to customers. But we'll see how that goes, because they obviously have a big quota from professional services side, and we don't want to distract them. So we may end up bringing an overlay for managed services from a sales perspective, but primarily dedicated. Yeah.
Okay, great. Wow, this does definitely go by real quick. So Ryan, thank you so much. We have a couple minutes. I'd be happy to take any questions. I do want to cover off 2 things in the next 20 seconds. There are a bunch of quick start guides. So they're the steps that I talked about. There's an overall presentation of the framework. Then there's dedicated pieces that blow it out in more detail for all of these topics. So if you go on the Microsoft Partner Network site and search for MSP Hub, I'm not exactly sure what the URL is, and when these are available, all of these are actually hyperlinked, so you can jump straight from there. But if you want to go to the site beforehand, just check for MSP Hub. So I would say there's one more session that I kind of went through that I would really recommend for the conference. It's kind of challenging on the last day of the conference in the afternoon, because most of the content's been gone over, but that's a good one this afternoon if you have the stamina to make a 4 o'clock Wednesday of Inspire meeting. And then the other thing is, please fill out your evaluation. If you liked it, please say that you liked it. If you didn't like it, please just be direct. I'm big on feedback. And so thank you very much. It looks like we have about 2.5 minutes. Any questions?
Have you identified your kind of target area of services yet?
So we're going to start with IaaS and PaaS, which is really where we're strong. We bring kind of a DevOps and infrastructure as code, depth of experience from our professional services practice, and that's where primarily most of our customers are focused in lifting and shifting some of those initial workloads. So that's where we're going to start.
Okay. Have you heard anything from your customers as far as other services?
So we have had, in initial conversations, we already have had customers ask us to do things like support Office 365, and Azure's always been our line in the sand. We haven't done Office 365 or SharePoint, but they want kind of that turnkey service from one provider. So even from the beginning, we're already being challenged with what do we want to provide. So we've also been asked about support for App Insights and also for OMS to be able to support those products. And that kind of, it's more of a support model than a kind of managed services model. So we're going to keep talking to customers and try to see if there's a fit, but ultimately we're going to focus on Azure.
Great. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Do you have a question? Yes.
SLAs, and how do you establish your SLAs? Any guidance on how you determine your numbers or different things that you feel?
Have you guys sorted that out yet?
Yeah, we've talked about it. I mean, I think for us, so a couple things around SLAs. First, the great thing about, I think, doing managed services in a cloud world is Microsoft is guaranteeing SLAs around uptime. So I think customers, have that ability to understand that Microsoft's supporting them there. And then obviously you're going to have to provide commitments back to customers on how quickly you're going to respond and how you're going to do things. So my biggest piece of advice would be talk to your customers, because if they're interested in this, they're probably going to have or have had similar service, maybe in the on-prem world, and understand what their needs are. And I'd also go back to what their business requirements are, because a lot of times people say, "Oh, I want 1 hour response time," but when you start asking why, you quickly realize that 4 hours would be sufficient to support their business processes.
Yes, sir.
How have you costed it? We're doing a similar thing on the other side of the world.
Yes.
So we're not competitors.
Sure.
But I've struggled to cost it.
Yeah. So right now, in thinking just about IaaS, we're going to do a per server kind of cost, and we're going to start with the 3 plans that you saw inside of the steps there, and then there's issues with scale with that model, in my opinion. So we're going to look at some type of multi-dimensional model for pricing, and I haven't quite figured that out. That's a tough problem, for sure. But I think the IP part, with if there is a bundle, and I think security is an area that, and we're going to partner in that area, but maybe that more of that bundling and some opportunities there to look at it a little bit differently.
All right, we're at time. Thank you very much for your partnership. It's a big commitment of time and resources to be here. So I hope you've had a great week, and I hope the rest of the conference goes well for you. Thank you.